So as you can see, I've jerry-rigged two cables here. That's the only clamps I could find, which are the ones that you put on a little base and hold model parts to paint them. But it's something to hold the wires on just now. And give this a little... There we go. So obviously over this and down here, these bits. Those Kato chassis are amazing, running over the Insel frog points, really slow and smooth. So yeah, you can see that the sidings are working just fine, and I'll get some power points in here, track feeds should I say, and if we feed this centre one, then it should feed either way, branch out from the centre of that, and you've seen it going through the points okay. So we'll see how that goes. We'll get it hooked up properly at some point, but we'll do a little bit more testing and playing while we just get this little bit kind of working, get out another locomotive. I've got an N-scale chassis there I want to test because I've got an idea for a body shell that's got to go on that. So yeah, let's get some other stuff set up and we'll get it running. So I have this chassis, it's an Atlas GP40 cotton belt livery. That doesn't matter because it's only the chassis I'm interested in. So we'll get that on the track and see if it's running. I can't remember if I tested this or not, I think I did, but it'll be fun to find out anyway. So that's the locomotive there. For an N-scale loco, it's got really nice detail on it. Very nice. Little N-scale KDs. Yeah, so let's get it on the track. Right, let's give it a test run. What can I say, it's Atlas. They make some amazing model trains. I think the chassis on this would be really good for a rail bus. Something similar to the one that runs in NAM 68, but more exclusively for Scottish Highlands, as it were. So it'll be interesting to see what I can come up with this. I only found this when I was looking for fish plates, which I can't find any of, so I'll need to buy a pack in order to make sure I can hook up all the flexi track that I have, so I can get fish plates on them, and obviously have the extension here as well. So yeah, there we go, track's down. Let's get some wagons on and another loco and see what we can do with that. And because of the isolation and its location for the Angel Share Whisky Distillery in Scotland, in a loch, in a valley, that traditional mainline trains couldn't reach it. So the owners installed narrow gauge track and bought narrow gauge equipment in order to ferry the stock and materials and also the whisky from this area to another, which makes it even more exclusive and sought after. So yeah, obviously narrow gauge means Old World War One Baldwin 1012Ds. Just do a little bit of shunting where we pull the skips out. All this is a bit ham-fisted just now. Obviously get the hang of what stock works well with other stock. And these are just that light. I'm going to have to put some sort of weights in them in order for them to function properly. Anybody that's used these knows fine well what I mean. But hopefully we'll be able to get that pulled out. This gives you an idea of the shunting capabilities, and also gives me an idea. Actually, we'll try and grab them. A little bit of sticking here and there, but otherwise track's running quite smoothly considering it's not pinned down. Just need a little tool to uncouple the stock as we work on it. Seeing how that S-bend is. Obviously once it's pinned down it should function a lot better. And that's pretty much the first little shunting session done on the angel share. Gives you a wee idea of what can be done with that angle nook. And we also have the other local that we can introduce, as well as the passenger train. So yeah, I would say that was a success all in all, and it lets me get motivated, builds up your excitement for carrying on and doing more. Once the cork comes in, can start getting that down, working on landforms, and just start taking it from there. I mean, really, this has just came on a whim, found the track, had the buildings, had the bit of wood, and I've just taken it from there. And I think that's one of the things about model railways is if you've got stuff that you can utilise elsewhere and it's sitting there in a box doing nothing, track, buildings or whatever, dig it out, do a little layout. Doesn't have to be massive. Just stick it all down, have fun. It's a good area to work in. Keeps up your skill set with painting and scenery and all that. So yeah, gotta love it. Just to have trains moving and running, installing. Yeah, amazing. Very happy. So there we go. First test successful. As you can see, I've put the buildings on. Got the water tower and a little signal box that will work the 5 points. I'll make sure I put in the cables for running the points. That's the cork underlay arrived for the track work. I just get a sheet, and basically what I'll do is cut out the strips as I need them and try and put a beveled edge on them. It's 2.5mm thick, so a bit thinner than a normal double O gauge. Still looks a bit thick, but we'll see how it goes. Get it down, and that way we can see what sort of shoulder we have on the track. If it's too high or not, I might not use it. We'll see. Still get used, but I've got it for this layout initially. So let's see how this cork goes. Now we can see the cork under the track. I've cut it, and I've also went along the edge with a scalpel to give it a little chamfer. And I want it rough, don't want it perfectly smooth because it is a narrow gauge railway. So I'm just wondering about the height of the track against the scenery. I'm thinking of obviously raising this part of the scenery up a little bit higher by using obviously sculptor mould and stuff like that to create landforms. But we need to see what landforms we're going to create before we raise that up. Maybe just about halfway up the height of the cork. So when the ballast is on the track and the edge of the cork, you'll see a ballasted shoulder and then the ground. So let's crack on. Yeah, I've decided there'll be no cork going underneath this track. It's just making it too high. I've also tweaked the track plan slightly. Many different variations to see what actually works and what suits. It will change yet again. So yeah, the idea is to have a 2-road locomotive engine shed. We'll have the water there, diesel fueling, coal, all that sort of stuff, because we're going to have steam and diesel. We also have a little siding down here to park a locomotive in, or to put in one of a piece of stock, freight or something. We have the signal box to control the points at either side. I've set the buildings at angles, so when you're looking at it, nothing's square on. You've got this kind of view here of the buildings. So the distillery will be in this area with the warehouse and the platform on that warehouse as well. So keeping those sidings the same. Put a point in here so we still have the elevation where the passenger train comes down. Thinking of extending the platform a little bit further up towards where the flat line is, and then have the stairs rising up to the path that leads into the Angel Share, and the tourists can visit the distillery. But down here we'll have an isolated piece of track where the locomotive can sit. Passengers get off, do their thing. This locomotive can then come down and attach to the coaches here for removing them back over the bridge. So that's an idea of some operations and some little tweaks to the plan. And again, the footage, photographs and viewing at this angle helps with the buildings being square on. Yes, I have continued to tweak the layout design and what everything is going to do on this layout, and to fit in as much kind of interesting details as possible, starting with the engine shed here. The squiggles with T's are trees. The line between the loch and the engine shed will be a fence. Got a diesel area there, coal stage, little water pipe thing for filling the locals from that water tower. The diesel tank's right there, but that won't be there. So this will be the engine shed area with all stuff kind of appropriate to it. And we move down, we've got the bridge supports here and the bridge there. We have a brick wall running around here that will then join a fence, some trees, signal box, working out the signalling. That might be raised so that we can get the little point levers in. I've moved the points back a little bit because that portion of straight track that you get in the Pico set track a little bit too long, and it's pushing the curve and the bridge too high up into that shoulder. So I've pulled it back a bit, and I'll have a shorter piece there, as you can see where the points are sitting on the track, in order to get the angle right onto the bridge. A little short straight. Buildings are still remaining in position, kind of courtyard area for that building. We'll have materials and stuff in it. The track is no longer going to have the cork under it because it's raising it too high. We have an ash pit here on this siding, and as I said, the cork's just making it too high. I want it all kind of bedded in on the ground so that it can be crossed over easily, especially if people are moving barrels about and stuff like that. You don't want to have big high rails to kind of traverse when you're moving stuff about. So all this is going to be on the low down. So we have a path here, some trees at the back, barrels in this area, a little walkway path between the wall and the track, and then we move down here and we have the fence between the edge of the scenery and the passenger line. Platform will take up that area. Passengers will no longer come up this way where the barrels are now. That's all going to be a low wall. Passengers will come off the platform, go through the station and upstairs. The tracks will end roughly here, so people can come up that way and walk round into the distillery. As I said, it's all ongoing. It's out of my head. I'm just trying to make it so I've got interesting scenes in it that it also looks half realistic as well, and it's a kind of proper narrow gauge. So there will be signals, ground levers, and all the kind of relative equipment that goes with a small narrow gauge railway. So I've raided all my boxes, my containers, and I've managed to pull everything out that I think I'll need. Some DPM kits. HO scale might be quite good for low relief backdrops. Chris Whittingham of Hales Heritage Railway, God rest his wee soul, passed away a few years ago. He actually 3D printed this halt, so I might actually see how that looks as part of the station area. Got my rock moulds around about the loch side. Got some grout. Got my plaster. That's a fibre mould actually. Plaster's in there for making the moulds. My box full of scenery. So yeah, all the goodies. But the one thing I can't find is my PVA. Typical. Well, let's get cracked on. That was a great gig. Zach Sabbath. Check it out. But yeah, put the fencing I'd like to use. Whether it's LMS, GWR, LNER, I don't care. If I've got enough fencing, then I'll use it. That's the little station halt, which fits perfectly, to be honest. That would lead down into the station, then the stairs up into the distillery. All the barrels there. So if we go down and have a look, you can see slight difference in elevation, creating depth of scene, which is what we're aiming for. So yeah, more plans afoot. At this end I'm going to have some rocks creating a mountain, so that we'll see a rock face there, one there, and obviously these ones stood up somewhere here as well to create like the mountain coming round into here. I've painted the baseboard to seal it before I prep for doing the water effect. And along here what I've done is, because the track was actually coming out a little bit, the way the station halt and the depth of the building went, so what I've done was cut a little slot out of the polystyrene there so that the building could go back a little bit further and then move up a little bit further as well. That way it gives us a little bit more room here to get in a decent sized station building, and the track will end here, and then obviously tourists go that way. So more progress, little bits at a time with the temporary bridge. Yeah, getting there. So I'm thinking of adding another bit of polystyrene on top, as you can see there, that thick. I don't know, it's maybe about 8-10 mil. I don't think it should cause too much of a challenge to the locals and rail bus going up and down here, but I just think that elevation would be a bit better. And it is narrow gauge, so they're both supposed to be able to climb hills, aren't they? So the idea is to cover that whole top surface with that thickness of polystyrene. I've measured out the cut from this sheet in order to sit on top and match that pattern there. So we'll get it chopped and we'll get it stuck on. Well, we'll sit it in, we won't stick it down yet. Still want to do some track testing once we get it in place. I've cut out the pieces to make the extra layer on top to add some more height and elevation. So the edges of these will all be eventually shaped and carved to kind of match the rockwork below. But I just felt it looked a lot better having a slightly higher elevation. Now let's figure out if the trains will actually run up and down that elevation. I'll jerry rig some sort of ramp. That was tricky, cutting that piece of polystyrene for the ramp. Let's see if it fits and it works. There'll be a little bit more tweaking to do in order for it to kind of work perfectly, but this is just an idea to start with. That's the rough idea of the improved elevation, which I think looks a lot better. Now it just needs kind of pinned down a bit, so it'll actually be on the flat here and run up there. So we'll see what sort of train we can get down on it. It'll just be sitting like that just now, so it'll be less of an elevation than when it's down pinned. Seagulls are having a whale of a time. But yeah, that's the idea of the improved elevation. I think it looks a lot better. Get some buildings on, get some more perspective on it. That's the building set up. See the difference in the track elevation. Now, let's get some stock on it. Let's do a test run. Done my usual. Jerry rigged a piece of track. And we'll get this out and running. Let's go backwards, the same speed. Easy peasy. Just because there's no track joiners yet. So yeah, little local run up and down there. Now let's try the rail bus. So again, excuse the shaky camera work. Stopped on that bit of track because it's not touching. Let's just touch it together. There we go. Now the reverse. Set it up for about 30%. intermittent connection there. It goes up to my finger. Sorry about all the movement of the camera, just trying to get it to... Yeah, that elevation will work fine. So now to glue down the panels that I've cut out, and we'll go with a higher version of angel share and increase 10mm in the ground height, giving us a better elevation down to the station. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. You can see the tracks behind and the stock and the locals on it as well. They're not all hidden at the same ground level. Now that level's a bit higher, you can see them better. Used a little bit of blue tack to try and hold the track down there, pull it a little bit more track level. See what the elevation's like here. Ran down okay. The elevation might end up a little bit steeper once we get it in place, but I think like it looks a lot better with that added elevation behind it. Adds a nice perspective. So this derelict barn building is an ideal size for the station building I'm going to put in there. Pretty much height and everything looks ideal, especially for the back, the doors leading up to the steps to take the tourists into the whisky distillery. So yeah, just put some items on to give the scene a bit of life. None of it's permanent, obviously, all open to change. But I like that scene with the barrels, the rolling stock, the warehouses, the passenger station. The depth of level looks a lot better. Some barrels there. A little pink beetle. Run in the rail bus, just stick it up one of the sidings. Seeing as I still need to get my track joiners in, and they will help keep the current going down this elevation. So yeah, it's looking great, very happy with it so far. All little touches going in place. Now to strip it all off and glue down the new top layer of polystyrene. That's the top layer glued down now. I'll stick some weights on it to make sure it stays down, but I've gave it a good press with that bit of wood to make sure it's had a good bite. I'll stick some weights on it and leave it for a good half hour or so, let it dry. This is 3mm hardwood plywood, quite cheap per sheet. Got 2 sheets. Basically put the fascia on, so that's the fascia in the front, the idea of it. And then we've got the side plate. I've also cut out the rear back seam plate, then I've just got this side here to cut out, and then see what sort of frame I'll eventually construct to hold the little roof part with the LEDs. So another bit done, another trip to the hardware store, getting there. So been to the hardware store, got some 3mm hardwood plywood, which is ideal for creating the fascia and the back seam. Also got some rough hewn timber as well to make up the frame. Still to cut out the end plate, but taking a wee bit of work because I'm using a coping saw and this knife, which has been handy for cutting this few scores to mark the line, and then basically run it through a few times and you get a decent enough cut. Now that part was done with the coping saw, and then these end pieces were done using a knife, which is relatively straight. So that's the box idea of it and the frame. Wanted to get that done basically so that I can start putting in the landforms, the scenery, the basically cover the polystyrene so that it's protected and I can start building on it. Now all I need to do is just get some wires through here to power that section of track and through these two holes, which will make in there for the lights and the power. Progress continues on the Angel Share 009 narrow gauge railway. You can see the front panel fascia is screwed on. I've also done a satin black on the panel here. Gave it its first coat just to see how it would take, make sure it didn't bow too much. Still seems relatively straight. It's just leaning at an angle because it's not fastened yet, so chances are I'll do the same with that and then the other panels, and that way they're kind of sealed and they should reduce any warping or any moisture getting into them, especially if I'm going to be putting back seams on, which will involve a water-based adhesive of some form, I'd imagine, which would then obviously cause these to warp if I just put a water-based adhesive straight on that. So by painting both sides black, it gives it, and the fact it's a black and white whisky distillery, so I figure the black would work really well. And then obviously the water in here, I've still to figure out what I'm doing with this, but the chances are I'm going to paint it really dark blue, dark green, and then use varnishes on it. I'm not using any water effects, any water pores to go in here. I've seen Boomer do it on Boomer dioramas, and I want to try and emulate his technique of basically applying a water effect straight on a flat surface. So it's coming together slowly but surely. There's some LMS fencing that will run along the side there as well. And thanks again for watching part 2 of this 009 narrow gauge layout build. As you can see, it's coming together, the framework's working out nicely, and we've got a lot more progress going on with the elevation of the track, etc. I have also started painting some of the buildings and structures, and I'll share that with next week's update.